30 Odd Minutes is sponsored in part by Digital Dowsing. Who are you powered by?
For the next 30 minutes, we will explore the unexplained. From mysteries beyond our galaxy to ghostly phenomena in our own backyard. We will dive into our psychic abilities and explore everything from conspiracies to the just plain weird. Welcome to 30 Odd Minutes. If the truth is out there, we will find it. But only by sheer accident.
Hey! Welcome to 30 Odd Minutes. It's great to have you guys back here. We love you. We have set the mothership down on the Island of the Dolls, a very spooky place, because tonight we're talking about haunted objects. And speaking of two haunted objects, I want to say hello to Matt and Andrew in the control center. How are you guys?
Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
Doing excellent.
Excellent. You guys are looking very dapper in black tonight. Always a good choice.
Very slimming.
Yeah, we need it.
Yeah, very nice. And of course, Sarah in the communications center. How are you, Sarah?
I'm good. No complaints.
What's going on?
It's a little hot out there.
I know.
I can't handle it. I'm melting.
Well, we can take the mothership to higher elevations.
Can we, please?
Right.
Yay. Next stop. But I also do want to say hello to NLTV in North Liberty, Iowa. Yes, those strange lights in the sky belong to the mothership. And yes, we are controlling your television for 30 minutes every week. Now stop asking questions.
Sure.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
And we do have a lovely email from Carrie Schmidt in Chicago. She says, keep up the great work. I love 30 Odd. My absolute favorite is the odd fact with Matt Moniz. Can he give us an odd fact tonight? Well, you're in luck, Carrie, because I am going to make Maddie give you one right about now.
Yeah, the largest animal, or rather, living thing in the world is actually 5 miles in diameter, and it happens to be a fungus. Some people would say it's, related to us.
Andrew, could you do the outro? That was an
Do
odd
Matt
fact.
Moniz.
Yeah, that was an odd fact, yes, with Matt Moniz.
Isn't that odd?
Yeah, we haven't done one in a while. We'll have to start bringing those
We're
back.
a little rusty. And it was
Yeah.
impromptu. But do the eyebrow thing. We got to do it. That's it.
Right.
Now we're good. And I do want to give a shout out to Nancy Palmer, who gave us money for our show.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Got
Hey,
gas
Nancy.
to get home someday. Thank you. I love you.
Thank you, Sarah. We will be back to you shortly. Okay, so tonight's show is about haunted objects, and our own Dr. Dreck had a run-in. Check this out.
Greetings, oddballs. Dr. Dreck here, and we're talking about haunted objects. And boy, are you lucky, because I have a haunted object with me here. I bought it in a Ferengi flea market the other day while we were cruising around outer space. Here it is. It's my haunted teddy bear. You ought to get a load of this, boy. They guaranteed me that it would perform right on TV for us, so let's give it a go, okay? Okay, Teddy, here's your big chance now. Show them how haunted you are. Come on, Teddy, show them how haunted you are. Come on, it didn't pay good money for you to just sit there like a stuffed doll. Come on. Well, I guess I've gotten taken again. Thought I heard something. I guess I got taken again by some fancy dealing, but I guess, you can't win them all, and... It's a piece of junk. Sorry about that, folks. It was just a piece of junk.
Thank you, Dr. Dreck.
At least I got him in the eye patch, not the other eye.
Yeah, at least he went for the bad eye. Please get him to sick bay right away, where I guess he would see Dr. Dreck. Odd. Okay. Okay. It's a common theory that locations can hold ghosts, like memories from the past. Paranormal investigators call it a residual haunting. So it may follow that objects can also hold memories, maybe even spirits, curses, and more. If you believe a rabbit's foot brings you luck, why couldn't a possessed doll bring you torment? In tonight's mission, we're going to see some haunted objects that have been the stuff of nightmares for their owners. Our guests have been researching and writing about the paranormal for years now. You've heard them on countless radio and television programs, including their own Spooky Southcoast show. And tonight they're here to talk about their brand new book, Haunted Objects, Stories of Ghosts on Your Shelf. Please welcome, beaming to us live from Florida, Chris Balzano, and abducted live aboard the mothership, Tim Weisberg.
Thanks for having me and Chris.
Chris, how are you?
Excellent. How you doing, Jeff?
Doing good. We've abducted your partner here. Tim, is this your first time on a spaceship?
It is, actually.
Yeah, it's roomy, isn't it?
I've seen it parked outside, and I always wanted to get inside before, but, it's an exclusive club, so.
And by the time we're done tonight, there's a thing we got to go through. You'll never remember anything about this. Sorry.
Just make sure you use the petroleum jelly on the probe.
Done. Hi, Chris.
Wow.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. You don't have to wipe my memory. I'm forgetting as I go.
Okay, good.
Good plan.
That's very helpful. Okay, guys, what makes you think that an object can be haunted? Let's start there.
Well, I know.
I think that
Okay, both at once. That's
an
really
object
good.
really has kind of every explanation for a haunting built into it. Whether you think material itself can conduct electricity and kind of trap energy, whether you think that someone's emotions, whether someone's feelings can be drawn to something. It's something tangible that you can hold in your hand, and it's one of those things that oftentimes is either passed down from person to person, or it's given to someone, or someone collects it and it's brought into a foreign location. It's kind of all those convergence of things make objects really kind of touch points for potential hauntings.
I agree with that, but I also think that we kind of attach our own haunting to these objects. We kind of give it a ghost, so to speak.
Right. Well, the thing about haunted legends, right? The reason that ghost stories, haunted place ghost stories work so well is that you've got something very tangible. You've got a haunted building, a haunted asylum, right? You can go there and see it. That's for real. The building itself is for real. And the object, it seems to me, is the same kind of thing, where you can say, like, hey, this isn't just a story. Here's the object. Here's the cursed, possessed, frightened, haunted, object or whatever. And that tangibility adds so much to the power of the legend. But I imagine you guys must have had a ball just looking into all this stuff. What kind of weird things are haunted out there?
Oh, all kinds of things. When we started doing our research into some of these stories, I expected to get a lot of dolls, toys, furniture even to some degree, but we got some really strange things and things that I never would have thought would be capable of being haunted.
Right. Chris, weirdest thing you saw?
The other thing that we really were doing as we kind of progressed on this is we wanted to think of what were objects that people thought were traditionally haunted, and what were some of the kind of like off-center things. And what we found was that not only were people having things that were haunted, things like as medals, collectibles, pictures, a birth certificate in one circumstance, but also that these kinds of stories existed in folklore and in kind of like urban legends as well as in reality, or as well as the reality of the people who are experiencing them.
Right. Okay, let's start at a place kind of close to where the mothership is parked tonight. Stone's Public House in Ashland, Massachusetts. We've got a photo of it. It's this great old haunted restaurant, former inn. Tell us about what's going on at Stone's.
Well, that's a very interesting case because when you try to put the legend with the haunting, it doesn't actually add up.
Okay.
The Stone's Public House was built in the early 1800s by Captain John Stone as a way to capitalize on the railroad coming through. Mm-hmm. And in the 1860s, the story goes that there was a 10-year-old girl who was killed right outside the public house, and they brought her inside to try to save her life, and she died. And the clothes that she was wearing a dress, and apparently that dress is hanging up in the attic to this day.
That's the dress, yeah.
And people who have encountered the dress have had paranormal phenomena happening both in and out of Stone's around it. One investigator took it home with him, had problems. A waitress took it home with her, she had problems. But the research that our friend Dave Francis did into it said that it's actually not necessarily of that era, and it would not have belonged to a girl of that age.
See, that's what was so interesting. I read in your book that Dave had this done, and that it was basically it would have been around the 1940s, right? Which is decades off, half a century off,
right?
From the time period, and that's so interesting, right? People just take these stories at face value because the dress is the haunt is there, and lots of people have come forward with real stories of hauntings in Stone's Public House. But then also the dress. I took that photo of the dress. I remember the first time I went there was probably 2002. To check it out, and the owner said, no, you can't go in the attic, it's too dangerous. And a couple of years later, there was a new owner, And I went in and introduced myself. I said, I really want to go in the attic. He's like, yeah, let's go, sure. And we went up there, and there was that dress. And so all of a sudden, all those stories I had heard became so much more tangible because the dress is for real, and it had that dark stain, which could be,
Could be anything.
It could have been a paint rag, I mean, but it's there. The dress is there. The stain is there, and it's a compelling story because we have that tangible thing. So dress is clothing, right? I mean, how many lady in white stories do we hear about? Gray ladies, white ladies, green ladies, all over the world. Women in wedding dresses, buried in wedding dresses, and I know this wasn't the only dress in your book. Chris, what other kind of clothing was coming up again and again?
Well, we actually had, it's really interesting when you can have a lot of documentation, and I was told a story out of Salem, Massachusetts, which had a ton of different different paranormal things going on. But one of the things that was interesting was that in the spare bedroom that they had, the woman used to go in and she used to kind of freshen it up and try to make it seem more homely. And one of the things that she did, homey I should say, one of the things she used to do is she used to go in, air out the room, and then kind of puff out these little girl dresses that she had. And she would often kind of come back and find them completely pressed out. This room, and they didn't know this until a little bit after they moved in, had actually been where 2 young girls had died. And there was a house fire, and I've read the articles, and I've spoken with the people who live there about the things they've seen. And these 2 little girls kind of, used to do a lot of playful things, but one of these things was, or at least seemed to be focused on, these dresses. And that's the kind of stuff that we were looking at was, in the context of a haunting sometimes, in a context of something where there's a lot of activity and a lot of different activity going on, within that you almost always find that there is some object that these kind of spirits will focus on, or some kind of object that they're drawn to. So in this case, where these dresses and these little girls would play with the dresses, sometimes even as she watched.
Now, interesting. Now, when we think of haunted objects, it's so easy to let your mind drift back to old jewelry and dresses and things like that. But you had a video camera in your book, a haunted video camera. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was a movie camera. A video camera would probably be predating or post-dating it by about 50 years. It was one of the old school, kind of run-on battery, 8mm film kind of deals. And the man who had it, he was kind of the family historian. He was the documenter of everything. He had a son, he had grandchildren, and when he passed away, he passed it to his grandson, who he thought, kind of in his, whether it was his own mind or his aspirations for him, this guy would kind of take the job of being the family, the family recorder and kind of keep people together that way, the way his grandfather had. It didn't turn out that way. The kid was kind of, he was your typical kind of post-college kid. He, kind of kept pushing it aside. And, there was film, there was an old school editor, and there was actually the camera itself. These things started to appear all around his house. They started to appear on his bed. He kept it, he was in an apartment building, he kept it in the basement in these kind of locked storage areas, with gates. And he would go down and he would find the stuff kind of all messed with, as if someone had kind of unlocked the gate, gone into all the film, gone into the pictures, and messed with them. And this is something that went on for quite a while with him until he started to be like, okay, Grandpa, I will do this if you just leave me alone. And when he actually started working on transferring these things, on editing these films, and kind of continuing on, even doing some recording himself, the grandfather was kind of at peace and went away. And that's one of the things that we found a lot of when we were looking at these haunted objects. It's a classic urban legend or mythological kind of explanation of ghosts, that there's unfinished business or stuff they need to get done or stuff that's against their will or against what their wishes were. And these objects are often kind of the focus of that. So in this case, it was a great example because when he started kind of living up to what his grandfather wanted him to do with all this material, then the ghost was kind of at peace and went away.
Interesting. And we have a photo of that editor. Yeah, there it is. So just, there seems to be an attachment to some of these objects, calling us to do something. And that's interesting, the past, coming up again and again. And there's other items, right? What else have you encountered, Tim? What are some of your favorites from the book that turned up?
I thought one of the most interesting stories dealt with a local investigator here in Massachusetts, John Brightman, was called into a case where there was a family that didn't quite get along. And the son lived with the mother. They were both elderly. The son was in his 60s, the mother was in her 90s, and they were in failing health. And apparently the other members of the family had decided to take power of attorney over the mother and go against the son's wishes. So he got so upset that he turned to what we think might have been macumba, which is a Portuguese form of voodoo.
Like a voodoo doll, kind of interesting. Okay.
And he created this fish, and they believe that the fish had some significance because there might have been a fisherman involved with teaching him the macumba because he had worked on some fishing boats. Right. So they feel he might have gone with a Portuguese fisherman who taught him about this. And this box was in an altar with the fish doll inside of it. Right. And all this bad stuff was happening to the family.
Yeah, there it is. Wow. And so that is a freaky looking thing. And we have a close-up, too, of the actual fish doll, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of looks like a fish.
Well, yeah.
And so they buried it in the backyard at the suggestion of a medium, saying that would break the curse.
Yeah.
And it didn't. It made things worse. So by the time John got called in to deal with it, he had to dig it up himself and go through the process of trying to hopefully remove the curse from this family.
See, now that's an interesting thing to me, because as we said earlier, if you believe a rabbit's foot is lucky, it brings you luck. If you believe something's cursed, you start focusing on it. You drop a dish in the kitchen and you say, oh, that's the cursed, whatever. It's so easy to focus your attention and things that go wrong on these various things. But yet, what about stuff that's supposed to be haunted, like this voodoo doll, like the Ouija board, the classic Ouija board. We've got images of that too. Are you hearing a lot of stories about those? I imagine they must have poured in. Everyone's got a Ouija story.
Lots of those. Chris had first-hand experiences with haunted Ouija boards.
Yeah, and it's funny because from what I understand, my stories are now part of ghost tours that go through Boston, especially the ones that go through Kenmore Square and show the old Charles Gate Hotel. And in the book, I have kind of a few of the very odd things that happened to my friends and I as we were experimenting in the great old Charles Gate Hotel in Boston. And one of them was we were constantly being interrupted when we were trying to speak with spirits by this one called Federal Government, who was obsessed with my roommate because my roommate was a little bit of a womanizer and hurt women. And this spirit was determined to kill him. And would talk about it all the time, how much it wanted to get him and what it was going to do to him and all these kinds of things. And then one night when it was kind of taunting him, he left the room. And when he came back, he was completely white. All the kind of color was flushed from him. And while he was gone, the Ouija board had been kind of going back and forth between AC/DC. So, not being well communicated. Do you want us to listen to some Back in Black? Is that what's going on here? Right. But when my roommate came back, he explained that he was completely soaking wet, and several times the light had gone out. And he had instinctively gone to screw the light bulb back in, which, of course, was electricity, So it was kind of one of those things where it was almost confirmed that, this ghost had tried to attack him and get him to fool him to electrocute himself, which happens with a lot of Ouija board cases and a lot of paranormal cases in general. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of connecting of things that might not be true. But when he was telling this story to a friend of his, a girl who he had been particularly rude to, and kind of made her life a little bit of a living hell for a while, she explained that she had had her own Ouija board experiences. And that the spirit had promised that it said it was the devil, and it promised you will be mine forever, I will protect you. And then when she asked the spirit the name, the spirit had said federal government, and she said federal government before he said federal government. So it was kind of this weird thing that even if it's one of those circumstances, even if you don't believe in ghosts, even if you believe the power of the Ouija board, how could it be that two people more than a decade apart could have the same experience with the same named spirit? So
right,
and so connected like that too.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. Those stories come up again and again, and people like us, people tell us about them. Okay, we're going to take a quick break for the news, and we'll be right back after this.
Early in July of 2012, under public pressure and a Freedom of Information Act, the English government released 7,000 pages of reports on UFO activity over the British Isles. In 1998, then Prime Minister Tony Blair was briefed by the Ministry of Defense on the topic of UFOs, shortly after writer-researcher Nick Redfern had sent a letter urging the Prime Minister to release all government information pertaining to the subject. One of these X-files contained the Condign Report, which stated there was a strong possibility that a number of Royal Air Force aircraft crashes over the years may have been the result of pilots being outmaneuvered by unidentified flying objects. Another declassified file covered a theory put forth by the Soviet Union, which stated that the UFO phenomenon was possibly caused by atmospheric conditions involving plasmas. Apparently, the Russian military took a serious look into the possibility that these plasmas could be used as a weapon. A gap between the superpowers in plasma weapon technology could have led to a mineshaft gap in, well, you know where I'm going with that. In other news, we can't leave the British Isles without reporting on yet another archaeological find of a real creepy grave. Not vampires or zombies this time, but Frankenstein mummies. The mummified remains were found in 2001 on an island off Scotland's west coast. Archaeologists were digging around a 3,000-year-old foundation when they uncovered the remains of a teenage child and a girl. A few feet away, the team then uncovered a man and a woman who had been wrapped up in a fetal position, similar to mummies found in South America. This discovery marks the first known examples of mummies in this part of the Old World. Recent study of the adults' remains has revealed that their skeletons were actually composites of other people's bones. It is also believed that the people whose bones were used to build these skeletons had been dead for about 600 years. Archaeologists believe that this was done to symbolize the joining of different ancestries into one lineage, or maybe just to creep out people 3,000 years in the future. Back to you, Jeff.
Thank you, Andrew. And we're back. Okay, tonight we're talking about haunted objects and the book Haunted Objects with Chris Balzano and Tim Weisberg. And when you're talking about haunted objects, nothing is quite as creepy as dolls. Sarah, you have a doll story. Enlighten us.
Who doesn't have a doll story? That's like my weakness. I love creepy dolls. So when I was a kid, literally when I was a baby.
Ah, there it is.
Yeah. The creepiest doll I probably ever had is right there because it was bigger than me. It was like the size of a 4-year-old child. Seriously, it like dwarfed me. Look at it. It wants to eat me right now. So that was a creepy doll. Once I could like walk around and like put it in the play box, I would always keep it in the toy box or the closet in order to sleep at night. I didn't like that thing. So when I heard about Annabelle the doll, I was a little bit intrigued, namely because it's the exact same freaking doll that I had as a baby. And so the story about this doll is mother gets it at an antique store, gives it to her daughter, who was like college age, going to nursing school. At first, everything seemed great, and then the doll seemed to like change positions and move around the house and was crossing its legs and ending up on different like pieces of furniture. Kind of, whoa.
Wow, that's Sarah's legs. Hey!
If only I knew. See, I knew it was creepy. So
it's totally creepy. But Annabelle, of course, was Lorraine Warren.
Annabelle, yeah. So anyway, fast forward, eventually they figured out this isn't such a great doll. They had a psychic come in. They said, oh, it's a little girl ghost. It wants to possess the doll and wants to play with you. But then it started attacking their father and showing up with blood. So in comes the priest, the Warrens. They determine it's an inhuman spirit. The Warrens take it with them and put it in their museum locked behind a glass box for good reason, because it was doing some pretty evil stuff. Right. So this seems to be kind of the norm with these creepy dolls that start doing stuff and moving around. And one of the other dolls that are pretty famous is Robert the doll, but I'll let these guys tell you that story.
There's Robert. Guys, tell us about Robert the doll down there in Florida.
Yeah, well, you know, Robert makes his home in Key West, and originally we were just going to do kind of a passing thing on Robert. Mainly because, you know, he's been done before. You know, we kind of want to talk about him, about Annabelle, but I ended up going down to Key West myself, like right around my anniversary. So I was actually able to kind of touch Robert the Doll mania. And also I was able to then write it off on my taxes the whole trip. But still, more importantly, I was able to kind of glance firsthand, and I had met Robert back in 2008 when he was up in Tampa at a ghost conference there. And I say meet because there's this whole kind of mystique around Robert, and there's this whole kind of, you know, in addition to the backstory, there's this kind of modern fandom about him. So the story goes that in the early 1900s, a servant who was working for the Otto family in Key West made a doll for Robert Eugene. He always went by the name Eugene, Otto. And now the confusing thing is whether things had started to happen or whether she was fired because she was creeping people out and then weird things happened because of that, like she put a curse on it. But regardless, Robert became a constant companion to Eugene, and oftentimes people would hear conversations that sounded like two different people talking from the room. Things started to happen around the house, things would break, things would go missing. And the catchphrase, Robert did it, kind of came into fashion. Eugene would always kind of blame anything that happened on Robert. But then other things were kind of going on weird. The doll would appear at different places. Then it kind of falls more into legend, because it seems that as he gets older, he gets married. And these are kind of the stories that are more not able to be backed up. He gets married. He refuses to get rid of the doll. The doll's like in the marriage bedroom with them. The wife gets freaked out by it. The wife keeps saying it. Regardless of any of this stuff that happens, the voices keep happening. The weird movements. People even claim to see him walk at times, or see his at least his shadow move across. Eugene dies. The doll gets put in the closet. It's discovered sometime later by another family, who brings it down and gives it to their daughter. Now, you've seen these pictures. This is not a very handsome doll at any point in its career, so I can't imagine 50 or 60 years after its creation, being dusty in the attic, it would be the best present to give your daughter, but I don't judge people.
Right.
But almost immediately, this doll starts causing havoc in the house, especially towards the daughter. Where it had been nice to Eugene, it seemed to kind of want to hurt the daughter. And she would claim that Robert would be creeping into her bed, or Robert would be trying to scare her and running through the room, talking to her about things that she didn't understand. And so the doll was finally given up, where it kind of hangs out in the Mortello Museum in Key West. And it spends some time in the post office. It does like a little kind of trip back and forth. And so I went there to visit Robert, and one of the really interesting things that I discovered, in addition to the kind of Key West holding on to this story and really enjoying this part of its kind of haunted history, was that people are really drawn to it, and people really think things that go wrong in their life post seeing Robert is their fault. Like, there are some rules when you're dealing with Robert. You have to say hello to him. You have to ask whether you can take a picture. You have to thank him afterwards. You have to be respectful while you're there. And people kind of joke around with this kind of thing all the time. They don't do it, and then they write letters back saying, just I was disrespectful. I'm so sorry. As soon as I left, my tire, blew out, or my keyboard went away, or I haven't been able to, hold a job since I did that, or all these weird things that are really, really, kind of curse-based, like we were talking about earlier, and people attributed to Robert. And so they then feel, if you can see in one of the pictures, is all these postcards and all these letters behind him. It's all these people who are thanking Robert for the things that he's done well for them, and then apologizing for the ones that have offended him. And it's really like one of these kind of, sensational stories of ghosts kind of taking on a whole community.
Excellent. It's an amazing story. A lot of people know it. So earlier today on Twitter, we asked our viewers, if you could haunt any object after you die, what would it be and why? We got some great answers. Julia Lambert, I would haunt my computer so I could still tweet. Very nice. Ohio Valley PIT, it would be my car. Christine all over again. Mwahaha. Well spelled. Wesley Pipes, an Xbox so I could play games when I get bored, because of course the afterlife is so boring. Donnie B, the company I work for, simply because they deserve to endure the horror until therapy is needed. Nice. Scott Grunwald, a doorknob. Everyone would have to touch me to enter. The fear energy alone would be huge. Well done. Nice. Well done. Guys, Tim, what would you haunt if you could haunt any object?
I think I'd haunt the mothership. This place is pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And if a haunted spaceship, oh man. Oh, there's a reality
Worlds are colliding.
There's a reality show just brewing there. Balzano, what would you haunt?
I originally was going to say one of my books, because I could live on, like in some Shakespearean way, but then I realized most of my books are probably read in the bathroom, and that's way too intense for me. So I'm going to go with a pocket watch, because they're kind of classic, and they're kind of like, someone cool would be wearing it.
Right on. Tim, any strange objects coming your way after doing this research? People say, I don't want this stuff anymore. You take it?
No, but I'd be willing to take it if they want to send it to me.
A museum could be brewing.
Well, a shed.
A shed.
Whatever works.
Chris, anyone sending you stuff?
No, but as soon as they do, I've had too much of that stuff, so as soon as they do, I'm going to send it off to Weisberg and Spooky Southcoast headquarters.
Sounds great. Guys, thank you so much for joining us aboard the Mothership to talk about your new book, Haunted Objects. Very exciting. In stores now, and more stores, I'm sure, are going to be pouring in your way. Folks, from us to you, until next time, stay odd. Yeah.